The sun scorched the horizon like molten gold, painting the small desert town outside the American forward operating base in harsh, unflinching light. Dust whipped across the sand-swept streets, carrying the sharp scent of iron and heat. Amidst this unforgiving landscape, a figure stepped down from the military transport vehicle. A young woman with a tan trench coat flapping slightly in the wind and an oversized hat shading her face. She moved with the casual air of a tourist, sunglasses reflecting the stark desert glare. Soldiers at the gate barely spared her a glance. She carried nothing that would arouse suspicion, just a backpack bulging with snacks, sunscreen, a guidebook, and a water bottle. A passerby might have thought she had wandered here by mistake, lost and curious. Her smile was easy, unthreatening, but her eyes were sharp. They moved in flickering sweeps, scanning the base, memorizing every detail: the perimeter fences, the watchtowers, the patrol routes. Every soldier's stride, every glint of sunlight off a rifle, registered in her mind. She was small, but her presence commanded awareness. The base's mundane routines, soldiers laughing, a Humvee rumbling past, the dull hum of generators, all hid a deadly secret she could sense even before she could see it. She approached the checkpoint with a measured pace. A young guard, barely 20, gave her a distracted nod. "ID," he muttered. "Of course," she said, pulling out a laminated visitor pass. Her voice was warm, unassuming. "Just here to see the sights." The guard scanned it lazily, hands brushing over the plastic. "All right, enjoy your visit." He waved her through, thinking nothing of it. The soldiers' laughter from behind the checkpoint mingled with the distant drone of helicopters circling overhead. It sounded ordinary, yet her instincts screamed that normalcy was a lie. Every step she took was calculated. Her hat tilted slightly, hiding the faint glint of a tiny camera embedded in its brim. Her backpack, seemingly harmless, was reinforced with compartments for tools that could dismantle a nightmare in minutes, or trigger one with a careless motion. As she moved along the sandy path leading into the base, she adjusted the strap over her shoulder, brushing against what appeared to be an innocuous water bottle. Only she knew it contained a small portable disruptor, a device designed to neutralize explosives with precision. The base sprawled out before her. Rows of beige modular buildings, sandbags stacked high, armed sentries moving in predictable patterns, and hums of electricity that ran through the concrete and metal. Nothing seemed out of place, yet she could feel it, a subtle vibration in the air, almost imperceptible, a rhythm that didn't belong. Her gaze flicked to a cluster of stacked crates near the fuel depot. Shadows played across their edges, thrown by the harsh sunlight. Her stomach tightened. It was a subtle, almost imperceptible hum, but she knew it for what it was, a device, live, waiting to unleash chaos. The base she had just walked into wasn't as safe as the soldiers thought. "Excuse me," a voice called, casual, and a soldier approached, his hands stuffed in his pockets. He squinted at her oversized hat. "You're wandering pretty close to the fuel depot there. You know that's restricted, right?" She smiled, tilting her head slightly. "Just stretching my legs. Beautiful day for a walk, isn't it?" He laughed nervously and waved her off. She knew she had only minutes. The faint blinking light behind the crates caught the corner of her eye, a tiny, red pulse that could have been mistaken for a reflection of the sun. But she knew better. That pulse was the heartbeat of danger, counting down silently. She moved quickly, yet gracefully, crouching near the base of the crates. Her fingers brushed against the sand, feeling the subtle vibration transmitted through the ground. This was no ordinary bomb. It was a sophisticated device, designed to bypass ordinary security checks and rely on human error. She felt the tension in the air, the potential for catastrophe that would engulf the base in smoke and fire if mishandled. Her mind raced through options. There were protocols she could follow, but the situation required improvisation. One wrong decision, one misjudged step, and the lives of every soldier in this base would be gone in an instant. Her heart beat steadily, but her pulse quickened, a rhythmic drum of both fear and exhilaration. The stakes could not have been higher. She glanced around. Soldiers went about their business, laughing and chatting, utterly oblivious to the ticking threat inches from their boots. A young private passed by, snapping selfies with a makeshift American flag pinned to a sandbag. She clenched her jaw and reminded herself, she could not afford distraction. Not now. The hum grew louder, more insistent. She traced the invisible lines with her eyes, the power conduit feeding into the device, the wires cleverly hidden among other mundane cables, the camouflage that made the bomb almost invisible. Her training took over. Every movement was precise, every decision measured. She would need to isolate the device first, neutralize the trigger, and only then consider removing it entirely. Suddenly she heard the shuffle of boots behind her. Another soldier appeared around the corner, leaning casually against a wall, carrying a cup of coffee. "Hey, you lost or something." His tone was casual, almost teasing, but he stepped closer, dangerously close to her operation. Her pulse spiked. One misstep from him could set off the device. She had to act, but any overt action risked panicking him. Slowly she straightened, maintaining eye contact, voice calm but firm. "Step back, please. That area is restricted." He froze, confusion flickering across his face. Her gaze softened just enough to convey authority without alarm. He nodded slowly, moving back, and she allowed herself a quiet exhale. The sun dipped lower, stretching shadows across the base and casting everything in an eerie amber light. She crouched back down near the crates, her fingers brushing over the wires of the hidden device. Sparks of heat radiated from it, tiny but real, a warning she did not need to hear. She could feel the energy, the potential for destruction, and the weight of responsibility pressed down like a physical force on her shoulders. She glanced back toward the entrance of the base, where soldiers laughed and joked, utterly unaware. One misstep here, one careless movement, and everything would change forever. Her mind calculated possibilities, contingencies, backup plans. She had trained for moments like this, but the adrenaline surged nonetheless, igniting a razor-sharp focus. And then she saw it. The tiny red LED blinked faster, almost imperceptibly. The countdown had begun, not in numbers, not in alarms, but in the rhythm she could sense with her trained instincts. The base wasn't safe. The soldiers thought she was a tourist, but she knew better. She had seconds to act before the worst-case scenario became reality. The desert wind howled through the narrow alleys behind the base, whipping dust into the folds of her coat. Inside a small, camouflaged safe house she had prepared just outside the perimeter, the young woman set down her backpack with deliberate care. Every movement was precise, controlled, as though she were performing a ritual she had repeated hundreds of times. She unpacked the real tools of her trade: a digital multimeter, wire strippers, and a small portable disruptor, compact devices designed to neutralize explosives with pinpoint accuracy. Each piece felt familiar under her fingers, worn from years of use, but none of them could mask the tension knotted tightly in her chest. The blinking red light she had spotted earlier was still alive in her mind, a heartbeat against the clock. Even through reinforced walls, she could sense its presence, a rhythm of danger vibrating faintly through the ground. She knelt on the rough carpet, arranging her tools in the methodical order that helped her keep calm. The base beyond the window seemed peaceful, the soldiers unaware of the impending disaster. Laughter echoed faintly from a distant mess hall. A Humvee roared past, and the sound of chattering radios filled the air, all normal, but she knew better. Her eyes scanned a digital map she had downloaded on a tablet, overlaid with schematics of the base's power grid and communications network. Whoever had planted the device knew what they were doing. The wiring pattern wasn't random. It avoided the standard security checks and harnessed the base's own energy lines to function. She frowned, tracing her finger along the lines. A misstep in the wrong sequence could trigger the bomb instantly. A soft beep from her multimeter alerted her to another fluctuation in the energy pattern. Her pulse quickened. The device was active, alive, and possibly already counting down in a way designed to bypass ordinary detection. She could feel it as clearly as if it were humming in her hands. Outside, the base soldiers continued their routines. A young private strolled past her vantage point, tossing a football to another soldier, neither suspecting a ticking bomb lay beneath the very ground they trod. A sudden thought struck her: the first device might be a distraction. Whoever had done this might have planted others, hidden even deeper within the base. She clenched her jaw. There was no time for hesitation. She donned a pair of tactical gloves, their worn leather soft against her fingers. She slid her backpack strap snug against her shoulders and adjusted the disruptor, checking its calibration one last time. Every component had to function perfectly. One misfire, one spark in the wrong place, and hundreds of lives could end in a second. She left the safe house, moving with calculated stealth. Dust swirled around her boots, shadows stretching across the desert floor like phantom fingers. As she approached the crates where the first bomb was hidden, she kept her eyes sharp, scanning for anything unusual. The soldiers thought she was a harmless visitor, a tourist wandering the grounds. That assumption worked in her favor. None of them approached, and none suspected the lethal expertise behind her calm demeanor. A young lieutenant appeared unexpectedly, squinting against the sun. "Hey, wait a second. Who are you?" "You're not." "I'm here to stop something dangerous," she interrupted softly, her voice firm but not alarmed. She held up her hand slightly, a universal signal of authority. "Step back, please." He froze, confusion battling with disbelief. His instincts told him this was no ordinary tourist. But before he could respond further, a sharp hum from the device made the hair on his arms rise. He stepped back, realizing the truth before she even finished speaking. She crouched low, scanning the wiring. The device was clever, camouflaged among mundane cables, bypassing ordinary detection systems, and connected to the base's main energy grid. She traced the lines with gloved fingers, noting the subtle variations in voltage that gave away the live circuits. Her training, honed through years of fieldwork in hostile environments, told her exactly where to start. One false cut, one misjudged maneuver, and the entire base could erupt. Her heart raced, but her breathing remained steady. She visualized every sequence in her mind: isolate the trigger, disable the energy flow, and neutralize the timer. The stakes were immense. Hundreds of lives, thousands of dollars in equipment, and the security of the entire base depended on her precision. The lieutenant watched from a cautious distance, his earlier skepticism replaced by a mixture of fear and awe. You really know what you're doing?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She didn't respond. Words could wait, action could not. Her eyes were fixed on the wiring, on the small, blinking red light that counted down silently, mercilessly. The hum grew louder, almost insistent, vibrating through the concrete and sand alike. She traced the energy source to a hidden junction box cleverly camouflaged with a layer of dust and paint. Her fingers brushed the surface, feeling the subtle heat of the device beneath. Outside, the wind shifted, whipping the desert sand into her face. She felt the eyes of the base on her, though no one could fully understand the tension she carried. Her pulse steadied, and she allowed herself a moment of calm, centering her focus on the work at hand. Every movement from this point forward had to be flawless. She knelt over the junction box, lifting the cover carefully. Inside, the wiring was a chaotic tangle at first glance, but she quickly identified the key circuits. The trigger wire, cleverly hidden among standard power lines, pulsed faintly with an irregular frequency. Her gloved fingers moved deliberately, testing continuity, measuring voltage, confirming that she had found the correct path. Then a sudden noise made her flinch, a distant footstep, too deliberate to be coincidence. She glanced up. A guard was wandering closer, perhaps curious about the tourist crouched by the crates. Her pulse spiked. She had to act fast. "Step back, please," she said again, her voice firm, commanding. This time it carried the weight of authority that came with experience. The guard froze, eyes wide, sensing the danger he couldn't yet see. He backed away slowly, giving her room. Her hands moved with precise efficiency, isolating the trigger wire. She attached the portable disruptor, a device capable of neutralizing the flow of electricity to the timer without triggering the bomb. Sparks flickered faintly as the device interfaced with the wiring, and she held her breath. Time seemed to slow, every second stretching into eternity. She checked her work. The disruptor was online, the trigger isolated, but she knew this was only the first step. The device was clever, layered, designed to test the skill of anyone who dared approach. There could be secondary triggers, hidden switches, or contingency mechanisms that would make a simple cut lethal. She had to anticipate every possibility, predict every move, and act faster than the bomb's insidious intelligence. The hum grew louder still, vibrating through the sand beneath her boots. Her eyes flicked across the base. Soldiers went about their routines, unaware of the peril inches from their feet. One misstep, one incorrect judgment, and disaster would unfold in seconds. A shadow shifted behind the crates. Her eyes narrowed. Someone else had been watching, waiting for her to reveal herself. The realization was chilling, but she did not falter. Her mind calculated contingencies, her muscles tensed in readiness. Whoever was out there had skill, perhaps even training. But she had been in situations like this before, high-stakes, life-or-death moments where the smallest error could be fatal. The faint beep had grown into a subtle, urgent rhythm, vibrating through the floor beneath her boots. Her eyes darted across the jumble of wires in front of her, each one a potential conduit to disaster. The timer wasn't displayed in numbers, but she didn't need them. The pulse of the hum was unmistakable. Time was slipping away. Her fingers flexed around the wire strippers, the tools she had memorized so intimately, each one an extension of her own muscle memory. She had less than 60 seconds, less than a minute to prevent a catastrophe that could erase everything within this forward operating base. The thought of the soldiers, oblivious, laughing, joking, wandering near her position, spurred her adrenaline into a razor-sharp focus. One wrong move, and she knew the consequences would be immediate and irreversible. Her gloved hands hovered over the wiring, feeling the subtle vibrations in the air and through the metal conduit. The device was sophisticated, far beyond ordinary homemade explosives. It wasn't just a threat. It was a statement, a test of her skill. She traced the hidden circuits methodically, each second a pulse of controlled panic, the kind she had experienced countless times in other high-risk operations. A sudden shadow flickered at the edge of her peripheral vision. She spun her head just in time to see a young private, holding a cup of coffee, stepping closer. His eyes widened as he noticed her crouched over the junction box, tools spread around her like a miniature command center. "Step back," she commanded, her voice cutting through the wind, firm but controlled. He froze, confusion mixing with fear. I didn't know." "You didn't see anything," she said sharply. Her eyes returned to the device. Time had no patience for explanations. The hum grew louder, a low, insistent warning vibrating through the crates and sand alike. Sweat trickled down her temple, stinging her eyes, but she didn't blink. Her fingers moved like lightning, stripping insulation from the wires, measuring voltage, isolating circuits with a precision that could only come from years of experience. Every motion was calculated, every decision deliberate. She identified the trigger, a slender wire camouflaged among a tangle of others. It pulsed faintly, a telltale sign of life, of intent, of imminent danger. She traced it back to its junction point, noting the hidden secondary mechanisms. This bomb was layered, designed to punish curiosity, to test resolve. Whoever planted it had skill. Whoever planted it had confidence. A sudden gust of desert wind rattled the nearby crates, scattering sand and dust into her gloves. The timer's hum accelerated, almost impatient. Her heart raced, but she forced her breathing into a steady rhythm, focusing entirely on the work at hand. She had trained for moments like this, where precision and nerves had to coexist perfectly. With a careful sweep of her hand, she attached the portable disruptor to the trigger wire. The device hummed softly, interfacing with the bomb's energy source. Sparks flickered faintly, harmlessly, as the disruptor began isolating the main circuit. She exhaled just enough to release tension, but her attention remained unbroken. Then a sudden click echoed from the junction box. Her eyes widened. The bomb's timer had advanced faster than she anticipated. Someone had activated a secondary trigger remotely, accelerating the countdown. She realized instantly she was being watched, tested, pushed. The shadow she had sensed earlier wasn't a random passerby. Someone had orchestrated this, counting on distraction and fear to make their plan succeed. The young private, still frozen nearby, shifted nervously. She snapped a glance at him, then back to the wires. There was no time for fear, no time for hesitation. She had to act. She traced the next wire, a slender copper thread, carefully cutting around it without disturbing the delicate balance of the rest of the circuitry. Sparks flew briefly, a harmless flare, but enough to make her pulse quicken. Outside, the base was oblivious. Soldiers continued their routines, unaware of the imminent danger inches beneath their feet. The wind carried their laughter to her ears, a jarring juxtaposition against the ticking death she confronted. Each second stretched into eternity, every heartbeat synchronized with the pulsing hum of the bomb. She moved to the next stage, isolating the secondary energy source. The wiring was cunningly hidden, designed to mimic mundane electrical conduits. Her hands traced the subtle differences, the faint vibrations that revealed the path. Her mind raced through contingency protocols, memorized sequences, and emergency shutoffs. One slip, one miscalculation, and the results would be catastrophic. The hum escalated, sharper now, like the breath of a predator waiting for its moment. Her fingers hovered over the final junction point. This was it, the culmination of her preparation, skill, and instinct. The desert heat pressed down on her, sweat stinging her eyes, but she ignored it. She had to move with surgical precision. The young private finally spoke, voice trembling. I think it's going to. Step back, she barked, and he froze again, eyes wide with fear. She couldn't afford distractions, not now. Her fingers worked swiftly, guided by instinct and knowledge. The disruptor interfaced perfectly, sending a pulse through the trigger mechanism, neutralizing it without detonating the device. Sparks danced along the wires as the hum softened, signaling that the immediate threat had been contained. She didn't relax. There was still work to be done. Her eyes scanned for secondary triggers, hidden switches, and fail-safes. The bomb's design was clever, layered with contingency mechanisms that could punish even the most cautious approach. She traced another slender wire, this one almost invisible against the junction box's interior, and noted its connection to a disguised power relay. A sudden noise made her flinch, a faint metallic scrape from behind. Someone else was there, hidden in the shadows, waiting for her to make a mistake. Her pulse surged again, adrenaline sharpening her senses. She didn't turn, didn't flinch. Instead, she adjusted the disruptor, extending its interface to include the secondary circuit. Sparks flickered again, harmless but illuminating the tense, grim determination in her eyes. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the scent of dust and metal. The soldiers' laughter echoed faintly, oblivious to the stakes. She worked methodically, her mind a machine of focus and calculation, moving through the steps she had rehearsed countless times in training, simulations, and real-world crises. And then the final pulse. The device went quiet. The hum ceased. She exhaled slowly, allowing herself a fraction of relief, but her eyes never left the junction box. There was no room for complacency. The presence of a second device elsewhere in the base remained a looming threat. The young private stared at her, awe and fear mingling in his wide eyes. I can't believe it. You stopped it." She didn't respond. Her focus had already shifted, scanning the surrounding area, anticipating the next danger. Whoever had planted this bomb might have more waiting, hidden deeper within the base. She was not finished yet. A faint vibration under the crates caught her attention. She knelt again, tracing the source with delicate precision. Her heart raced, but her mind was steady. She knew the base was far from safe, that the first device had been only the opening move. Whoever had orchestrated this attack was watching, testing, and waiting for their next opportunity. The quiet hum of the disrupted bomb still lingered in the back of her mind, a ghostly reminder of what could have happened. She crouched behind the crates, fingers tracing the sand-strewn floor as her eyes scanned the immediate area for anomalies. The desert wind rattled the metal siding of the base, carrying the faint sounds of soldiers moving about, blissfully unaware of the silent war waging within their perimeter. She exhaled slowly, grounding herself. Her gloves were coated in a thin layer of dust, her brow slick with sweat, but her focus was absolute. One device neutralized was a victory, yes, but it might only be the opening act. Her instincts screamed that more was hidden, somewhere deeper, somewhere more insidious. Whoever planted the bomb wasn't just trying to terrorize. They were sending a message, a calculated strike against this base's defenses. Her eyes flicked to the entrance of the maintenance tunnel nearby. A faint vibration, almost imperceptible, suggested that the source of danger was below ground. She rose to her feet and approached the tunnel cautiously. Every step was deliberate, measured, calculated to minimize any accidental triggering of hidden sensors. The lieutenant who had stumbled across her earlier hovered nearby, curiosity and fear battling across his face. "Wait, you're going in there?" he asked, his voice a whisper, barely carrying above the wind. She glanced back at him, expression unreadable beneath the brim of her hat. "Stay here," she said softly, but her tone brooked no argument. "If anything happens, follow my instructions exactly." He swallowed hard, stepping back, eyes wide with awe. He had seen her in action, had witnessed the calm precision with which she neutralized the first bomb, but he had no idea of the depths of her skill, or the intensity of the danger she now faced. The tunnel entrance yawned like a dark mouth, swallowing the harsh sunlight and spitting out shadows. She descended, boots thudding softly against the metal grating. Dust rose around her as she moved, carried by the faint draft of air circulating through the base's hidden veins. Her fingers brushed along the walls, feeling for irregularities, subtle hums, anything that could betray the presence of a second device. A slight pulse in the floor beneath her boots made her pause. The rhythm was different from the first bomb, a more complex signature, almost intelligent in its design. Whoever planted this had anticipated the possibility of intervention. This device was designed to punish, designed to kill. Her mind raced through possibilities. A secondary bomb this sophisticated would almost certainly be connected to the base's central power grid, perhaps even rigged to detect tampering with the first device. Every movement, every decision could be catastrophic. She crouched low, eyes narrowing, studying the floor, the walls, the faint outlines of wiring hidden beneath panels and conduit. A soft beep echoed from her disruptor. Her heart rate spiked. The pulse wasn't random, it was deliberate. A secondary timer had activated. She scanned the tunnel, tracing the invisible threads of danger. It led her to a small junction beneath a maintenance panel, carefully camouflaged against the wall. The panel was nothing remarkable to an untrained eye, but to her it was screaming with danger. She knelt and began to work. The panel was cleverly rigged, layered with fail-safes designed to trigger if anyone attempted unauthorized access. A false wire could set off the device instantly. Her gloves brushed the surface, fingertips testing insulation, vibration, and subtle warmth. She traced the primary circuit to a hidden trigger relay, noting how it connected to secondary lines that fed deeper into the base. Whoever had designed this bomb had thought of everything. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling shutters and sending a swirl of sand cascading through the air vents. The sounds of distant soldiers echoed faintly, a constant reminder that lives depended on her precision. Every decision had to be perfect. She drew a steadying breath, centering her mind as she began isolating the secondary trigger wire. A sudden noise from deeper in the tunnel made her freeze. The faint shuffle of boots, almost imperceptible against the echoing metal floor, suggested she wasn't alone. Someone else had been moving through the tunnels, observing her progress, perhaps waiting for the moment to strike. Her pulse quickened, but she didn't flinch. Years of training had honed her to this moment, a state where fear was secondary to focus, where the mind could function under the heaviest of pressures. Her fingers moved with deliberate precision, isolating the correct wire while avoiding the cleverly disguised decoys. Sparks flickered softly as she connected the portable disruptor, sending a controlled pulse through the circuit to neutralize the secondary trigger. The hum shifted slightly, a subtle indication that the mechanism had been successfully contained, but she couldn't afford to celebrate. The bomb's intelligence was sophisticated, layered with contingency mechanisms that could respond to tampering. The lieutenant's voice called faintly from the tunnel entrance, "Ma'am, are you okay?" She didn't answer, focusing entirely on the panel in front of her. She had no time for explanations, no room for hesitation. Every movement had to be flawless. A single mistake could mean the loss of hundreds of lives. Her eyes scanned the wiring one last time, checking for hidden circuits or secondary failsafes. The design was meticulous, a deadly puzzle left by someone with extensive knowledge of explosives and military infrastructure. Whoever had planted it wanted to challenge her, to see if she could succeed. She smiled faintly, a cold, determined curve of her lips. They didn't know who they were dealing with. She disconnected the final relay, sending a pulse through the device that silenced its hum entirely. The junction beneath the maintenance panel went quiet. She exhaled slowly, allowing herself a fraction of relief, but her eyes never left the shadows of the tunnel. Outside, the base continued its oblivious rhythm. Soldiers laughed, joked, and patrolled, unaware of the disaster she had prevented moments ago. Her training told her the first bomb had been only a test, a warning. The presence of this secondary device confirmed it. Whoever was behind this attack had a larger plan, one that could extend beyond this base. Her gaze flicked toward the deeper tunnels, darker and less familiar. Another pulse, fainter but present, suggested yet another hidden mechanism. Her pulse quickened. The enemy wasn't finished, and neither was she. She packed her disruptor, checked her tools, and moved deeper into the tunnel. Every step was measured, deliberate, minimizing the chance of accidental triggering. Dust rose around her boots, shadows flicked across the walls, and the faint hum of the desert wind outside mixed with the barely perceptible pulse of the hidden devices. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the tunnel, distorted and unfamiliar. "You shouldn't be here." Her heart skipped a beat, but she didn't flinch. Someone had entered the tunnels, someone skilled enough to bypass the base's security unnoticed. She crouched low, eyes scanning the shadows, and reached for her disruptor, ready for whatever threat lurked ahead. The tunnel walls closed in around her like the barrel of a gun, narrow and oppressive, shadows flickering in the harsh light of her headlamp. Her boots made no sound on the metal grating, but the faint hum beneath her feet vibrated through the soles, reminding her that every second counted. The secondary device had been isolated temporarily, but the faint pulse in the floor warned her that it could reactivate or trigger another linked mechanism at any moment. She was deep in enemy territory, and the base above continued its oblivious routine. Her eyes scanned the walls, every panel, every irregular seam, every hidden corner. She could feel the weight of the soldiers' lives above her, hundreds of lives dependent on her skill, intuition, and nerve. This was no longer a routine intervention. This was war waged in silence, a battle of wits against an invisible enemy. She knelt over the maintenance panel, gloves brushing against the smooth metal surface. Her fingers traced the circuit patterns, memorizing the intricate design, noting subtle differences in wire insulation, pulse rhythm, and resistance. Whoever had planted this bomb had not only skill but a deep understanding of military infrastructure and countermeasures. This was sophisticated, far beyond ordinary insurgent devices. A faint scrape echoed through the tunnel. She froze, every muscle coiled like a spring. The sound was deliberate, not random. Someone else was here observing, perhaps waiting for her to make a misstep. Her pulse quickened, but her breathing remained controlled. Years of field training had prepared her for moments like this. High-stakes, time-critical, life-or-death operations where hesitation could be fatal. The first step was delicate, isolating the primary trigger. The wiring was cunningly camouflaged, a mixture of real and decoy circuits designed to confuse and intimidate. Her fingers brushed lightly along a copper wire, feeling for the slight vibration that indicated current flow. One false touch, one careless cut, and the results would be catastrophic. She attached the portable disruptor to the wire, a small device capable of neutralizing the flow of electricity without triggering the timer. Sparks flickered faintly as it interfaced with the circuit, harmless but bright in the dim tunnel. She exhaled slowly, letting the tension drain from her shoulders just enough to keep her focus razor-sharp. Suddenly, a voice echoed from deeper in the tunnel, distorted by the walls. "You shouldn't be here." Her heart skipped a beat, but she didn't flinch. The voice was calm, controlled, someone confident in their presence and in the device they had planted. Her mind raced through possibilities: an accomplice, a saboteur, or the mastermind themselves. Whoever it was, they had underestimated her. She crouched lower, eyes scanning the shadows, tools ready, every sense heightened. The pulse in the floor beneath her feet accelerated slightly, a warning. The device was intelligent, adaptive. It could respond to tampering. Her hands moved faster, more precise, isolating the next critical wire while avoiding decoy circuits. Sparks flickered again as she guided the disruptor's pulse through the secondary relay. Time seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously. Each heartbeat was amplified, each breath a measured act of control. The faint hum of the bomb, the whisper of the desert wind infiltrating the tunnels, the distant sounds of oblivious soldiers above, all became a symphony of tension she had to navigate perfectly. Her eyes caught the tiniest anomaly, a microswitch embedded in the junction box, cleverly hidden beneath layers of insulation and dust. She realized immediately, this was a failsafe. If the wrong wire was touched, or if the primary circuit was disrupted too quickly, it would detonate. Her pulse surged, but she remained steady. Years of experience allowed her to operate under extreme pressure, parsing the smallest details to avoid catastrophe. With deliberate precision, she disconnected the microswitch and rerouted the secondary trigger through the disruptor. The hum softened, a subtle sigh of temporary relief, but she didn't relax. The design of this bomb indicated multiple layers of contingency, each one more lethal than the last. She had neutralized the immediate threat, but the danger was far from over. The lieutenant's voice called faintly from the tunnel entrance, strained and uncertain. "Ma'am, are you okay?" She didn't answer, eyes fixed on the panel. Her mind was fully occupied with the calculations of current flow, wire tension, and fail-safes. A single miscalculation could trigger a chain reaction. She couldn't risk distraction, even for a second. A shadow shifted along the wall, barely perceptible in the dim light. Her instincts screamed. Someone else was here, closer than before. She glanced upward, scanning the tunnel entrance, and then back to the junction box. Every fiber of her being was on high alert, balancing precision with situational awareness. Her fingers moved with practiced speed, isolating the final wire. This was it, the culmination of all her training and experience. She attached the disruptor for the final sequence, sending a controlled pulse through the primary circuit. Sparks danced harmlessly along the wiring as the device went quiet, the hum dissipating into silence. She exhaled slowly, relief mingled with exhaustion, but her eyes never left the shadows of the tunnel. She knew the enemy was watching, waiting for her to relax. The base was safe for now. The first two devices had been neutralized, but the faint vibration beneath the floor hinted at something more insidious, hidden even deeper. Her mind raced ahead, calculating the possibilities. Whoever had designed this bomb had anticipated intervention, had layered contingencies, had tested the skill and nerves of anyone who dared approach. The sophistication was almost arrogant in its precision. She smiled faintly, a cold, determined curve of her lips. They hadn't accounted for her experience, her focus, or her resolve. Outside, the wind howled through the base, rattling metal siding and stirring dust into clouds that swirled through the open vents. The soldiers above continued their routines, oblivious to the narrow escape they had just experienced. She could almost hear the echo of their laughter as she packed up her tools, each item sliding smoothly back into the compartments of her backpack. The lieutenant approached cautiously, eyes wide with awe and fear. I can't believe it," he whispered. "You stopped it." She didn't answer. Her mind had already shifted to the next challenge, scanning the deeper tunnels for any additional threats. Whoever had orchestrated this attack wasn't finished. This had been only a preliminary strike, a warning. Somewhere in the base, another device more sophisticated, more deadly, waited for the next careless movement. She moved deeper into the tunnel, every step measured, every breath controlled. Dust rose around her boots, shadows flicked across the walls, and the faint hum of hidden devices whispered reminders of the danger that still lurked. The tunnel stretched ahead like a shadowed artery, silent except for the faint hum of the desert wind and the soft echo of her own careful movements. Her boots pressed against the metal grating, the vibrations beneath her feet sharper now, more insistent, a clear signal that the second device had activated. Her pulse quickened, but her expression remained calm, unreadable beneath the brim of her hat. There was no margin for panic. One wrong step, one careless flick of a wire, and the consequences would be catastrophic. Her hands brushed along the walls, seeking irregularities, testing surfaces for heat, vibration, or sound. Every fiber of her being was tuned to detect the faintest hint of danger. The first two devices had been a test of her skill, a warning from someone who had assumed no one could match their cunning. But she had neutralized them both, and now she faced the true challenge. A hidden bomb, smarter, deadlier, and rigged with contingencies she could not yet see. A soft scrape echoed from behind. Her body tensed, every muscle coiled like a spring. She spun, flashlight cutting through the shadows, and caught a glimpse of movement, a figure slipping between the tunnel supports. Someone else was here, moving deliberately, silently, watching her every move. The realization hit her like a jolt. She was not just confronting the device. She was confronting its handler. She crouched lower, fingers hovering over her disruptor. The pulse beneath her feet was erratic now, faster, sharper, almost like a heartbeat. Whoever had planted this device had anticipated interference. They had rigged it to respond dynamically, to punish mistakes, to test nerves. Her eyes flicked along the tunnel, mapping potential escape routes, potential hazards, and potential points of leverage. "Stop right there," she called, voice calm but authoritative, cutting through the silence. "I know you're there. Step into the light and show yourself." No response. Only the soft echo of the wind and the subtle vibrations from the device. She took a careful step forward, scanning the shadows with trained precision. The figure had disappeared, leaving no trace but the faintest disturbance in the dust on the grating. Her instincts screamed. They were close, patient, and skilled. Her eyes flicked to the floor. A tiny seam in the metal grating, almost invisible, betrayed the presence of something beneath it. She knelt, fingers tracing the edges carefully. There it was, a secondary panel, cleverly camouflaged, with wiring disappearing into the base's infrastructure. The pulse beneath her feet originated from here, a device designed to strike silently, lethally, and without warning. She exhaled slowly, centering herself. Years of training had honed her to operate under exactly these conditions: high stakes, extreme pressure, invisible enemies. Her hands moved with deliberate precision, lifting the panel and exposing the labyrinthine network of wires beneath. The pulse quickened as she traced the circuits. Whoever had planted this had layered it with fail-safes, contingency triggers, and decoy circuits meant to confuse and intimidate. The figure behind her shifted again, closer this time. Her hand went to the disruptor, fingers brushing the controls, ready to respond. The pulse beneath her feet surged sharply, almost as if aware of her presence. She recognized the signature, It was no ordinary timer. It was adaptive, intelligent, designed to respond dynamically to interference. "You shouldn't have come here," a voice finally spoke, calm, deliberate, and chilling. The saboteur stepped into the dim light, partially obscured by shadows. "This is beyond your skill." Her eyes locked on the figure, studying posture, stance, and movement. Every instinct screamed that this was someone trained, experienced, and confident. Yet she didn't flinch. Her response was measured, calculated. "I'm here to stop you. One wrong move and everyone in this base dies. Step back." The saboteur smirked faintly, a cold, calculating expression. "You think you can defuse it? You've already triggered one of my safeguards. One mistake." The threat hung in the air like a razor blade. Her fingers traced the primary circuit beneath the panel, isolating the initial trigger while avoiding decoy lines. Sparks flickered faintly as she attached the disruptor, sending a controlled pulse through the wiring. The device's hum softened, a subtle sign of temporary neutralization. But she knew this was only temporary. There were secondary circuits, adaptive mechanisms, hidden contingencies waiting to punish missteps. The saboteur took a deliberate step closer. "I didn't think anyone would reach this point. Impressive, but it ends here." Her mind raced through options. The pulse beneath her boots accelerated, warning her that a secondary timer had been activated remotely. There was no margin for error. She couldn't risk confrontation. Every movement had to be surgical, precise, and faster than the device's intelligence could react. She crouched lower, isolating the secondary line, and connected the disruptor in a delicate sequence. Sparks flickered again, harmless but illuminating her face and the calculated determination in her eyes. The saboteur's smirk faltered slightly, a hint of surprise flashing across their features. They had underestimated her nerve, her skill, her focus. A sudden vibration pulsed sharply through the floor. The saboteur's eyes widened. She had anticipated this, and with swift precision she rerouted the secondary circuit, neutralizing the immediate threat. The hum dissipated entirely, leaving only silence in the tunnel. For a moment neither of them moved. Dust swirled around their boots, the dim light casting elongated shadows across the tunnel walls. She remained calm, muscles coiled, eyes sharp, aware that the saboteur could still trigger another hidden device at any moment. "You're good," the saboteur said finally, voice tight with a mix of admiration and frustration. "But this isn't over." She didn't respond. Her eyes were already scanning deeper into the tunnel, assessing for other hidden devices, other threats, other contingencies. The base above remained oblivious, a fragile layer of normalcy hanging over a web of hidden danger. The saboteur stepped back, melting into the shadows once more, leaving only the faintest trace of movement behind. She knew they were still here, watching, waiting, testing her nerve. The pulse beneath her feet indicated another device deeper within the base, smarter, more lethal, and designed to exploit the next misstep. Her fingers tightened around the disruptor, heart steady but adrenaline sharp. Every soldier above depended on her. Every second was precious. She rose slowly, eyes scanning the tunnel ahead. The battle was far from over. Whoever had orchestrated this attack had layers of plans, contingencies, and hidden devices yet to reveal themselves. The tunnel stretched into darkness, a narrow artery of steel and shadows, whispering threats she could almost hear. The pulse beneath her boots had grown sharper, more insistent, signaling that the third device had activated. Her eyes, shielded by the brim of her hat, scanned every inch of the tunnel. Every panel, every seam, every irregularity was a potential threat. The saboteur had planned meticulously, leaving behind a network of hidden devices and layered contingencies designed to test, intimidate, and punish. She moved cautiously, the disruptor clutched tightly in gloved hands. Every step was calculated, measured to minimize vibration, minimize sound, and minimize the risk of triggering a hidden mechanism. Her heart rate was steady, but her mind raced with possibilities. Where was the device located? How was it rigged? And what contingencies awaited her? She had neutralized 2 bombs already, but this one was different. The pattern of the pulse suggested intelligence, adaptability, a machine designed not just to kill, but to anticipate her every move. A faint metallic click echoed through the tunnel. Her instincts screamed. The saboteur had been closer than she realized, every fiber of her being tensed. She crouched behind a support beam, eyes sweeping the shadows, breath steady, muscles coiled like springs. The pulse beneath her feet shifted slightly, a warning she could not ignore. "You've come far," a voice echoed, calm and precise, cutting through the tunnel air. "But this is where it ends." She didn't respond, focusing entirely on the subtle changes in the pulse beneath her boots. Whoever was speaking was confident, skilled, and patient, traits she respected, but also traits she knew she could outmatch with focus and experience. The third device revealed itself only gradually, a faint heat signature behind a row of maintenance crates, almost invisible in the dim light. Its wiring was sophisticated, layered with decoy circuits, micro switches, and adaptive triggers that would respond to even the slightest miscalculation. The pulse beneath her feet aligned perfectly with its hidden position. She knelt, gloved fingers brushing along the crates, isolating the entry panel. Her heart was steady, but every nerve screamed with the awareness that a single error could annihilate everything: the base, the soldiers above, and herself. She traced the wiring carefully, isolating the primary circuits while avoiding the cleverly hidden decoy lines. Sparks flickered faintly as she interfaced the disruptor, sending a controlled pulse through the device. A sudden shuffle behind her made her spin. The saboteur emerged from the shadows, moving deliberately, a faint smirk playing on their lips. "I didn't think you'd make it this far," they said, voice calm, dangerous. "But I warned you, one mistake and it all ends." Her gaze met theirs. "I didn't come here to lose," she said simply, voice steady, controlled. Every word was deliberate, every syllable a statement of confidence and focus. She returned to the device, isolating the secondary circuits, carefully bypassing adaptive triggers that could respond to tampering. The saboteur took another step closer, evaluating her movements with a predator's precision. "You're good," they said. "Better than I expected, but not good enough." She didn't falter. Her fingers moved with practiced precision, connecting the disruptor to the next circuit. Sparks flared briefly, illuminating the determination etched across her face. The pulse beneath her boots softened, indicating temporary containment, but her eyes scanned the wiring for hidden contingencies. Time compressed, seconds stretching into eternity. She moved quickly, precisely, bypassing the micro switches designed to trigger if any sequence was altered. Every motion was deliberate, every decision calculated to avoid the deadly consequences of a single misstep. The saboteur shifted, their expression unreadable beneath the dim light. "You're faster than I imagined," they said. "But speed isn't enough. Precision, timing, nerve. One slip." She ignored the threat, her attention fully on the wiring. She isolated the final trigger wire, connecting it to the disruptor in a delicate sequence. Sparks danced harmlessly along the circuits as the hum of the device dissipated entirely. For a moment, there was silence, a tense, suffocating stillness that enveloped the tunnel. The saboteur's eyes narrowed. "You neutralized it." Their voice carried a mixture of respect and frustration. "Impossible." She rose slowly, scanning the shadows. "It's over, step back." But the saboteur didn't move. Instead, they reached for a small device at their belt, a remote trigger. Her eyes widened. This wasn't over. The final challenge had been a test, yes, but now the saboteur was ready to escalate. Her hand darted to her disruptor, activating a secondary pulse designed to override electronic triggers within a small radius. Sparks arced across the floor as the device interfaced with the saboteur's mechanism. The hum of the tunnel shifted, a subtle war of technology, intelligence, and nerve. The saboteur cursed under their breath, eyes wide with surprise. Their remote failed to activate the device as intended. She had anticipated this move, preparing contingencies for the contingencies. Her mind raced, calculating every possibility, every countermeasure, every potential failure. The pulse beneath her boots began to fade. The third device, deadliest of all, had been neutralized without incident. Silence returned to the tunnel, except for the faint echo of her own breathing and the distant sounds of the base above. The saboteur stepped back, defeated but defiant. "You won this time," they said, voice tight with frustration. "But others will come. Others will test you. You haven't seen the last of us." She didn't respond. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the tunnel once more to ensure there were no other threats. The base above remained oblivious, soldiers continuing their routines, lives hanging by the thread of her skill. She packed her tools, checking each item with meticulous care, ensuring nothing had been left behind that could trigger another disaster. For the first time in hours, she allowed herself a small breath of relief. The immediate threats had been neutralized, the saboteur thwarted and the devices disabled. But the war of wits, of skill, of life-or-death strategy had left its mark. Sweat slicked her brow, dust coated her gloves, and adrenaline still coursed through her veins. She stepped back from the final panel, scanning the tunnel one last time. The saboteur melted into the shadows, disappearing before she could reach them. Whoever they were, they had underestimated her skill, her nerve, and her experience. She knew they would attempt another attack, but for now, the base was safe. Outside, sunlight broke through the entrance to the tunnel, spilling into the shadows. She emerged slowly, the harsh desert light burning her eyes, reflecting the calm intensity of a warrior who had faced death and prevailed. Soldiers above went about their routines, unaware of the silent war that had raged just beneath their feet. The desert sun blazed overhead, casting long, harsh shadows across the base. The air was filled with the familiar hum of military life, distant engines, radio chatter, soldiers shouting orders, and the rhythmic pounding of boots against asphalt. To the untrained eye, everything looked normal, routine, safe. But she knew the truth: the base had come perilously close to destruction, and only her skill, focus, and nerve had prevented catastrophe. She emerged from the tunnel slowly, the harsh sunlight burning her eyes, illuminating the dust coating her gloves and the sweat that streaked her face. Every step was deliberate. Her heart still raced, adrenaline lingering like a pulse she couldn't quite shake. She had neutralized 3 devices, outmaneuvered a skilled saboteur, and navigated a maze of hidden threats, all while under extreme pressure and complete isolation. Soldiers moved around her, unaware of the invisible war that had just played out beneath their feet. The lieutenant who had stumbled across her earlier approached, wide-eyed and hesitant. I don't even know what to say," he stammered. You saved us all. I mean." His voice trailed off, disbelief and awe mingling in his tone. She nodded slightly, keeping her expression calm but controlled. Words weren't necessary. Her actions had spoken louder than any explanation could. Yet the weight of the hours spent navigating danger, the narrow escapes, and the intense focus required pressed on her shoulders. She allowed herself a brief moment to breathe, letting the sunlight warm her face, feeling the tension of the past hours slowly release. The base commander appeared, his stride brisk, eyes sharp. "Lieutenant, what's going on?" he demanded, scanning the area with concern. His gaze landed on her, a figure dust-streaked and composed, carrying the unmistakable aura of someone who had just walked through a storm of danger and emerged unscathed. The lieutenant hesitated, then gestured toward her. "Sir, she neutralized multiple explosive devices. The entire base was at risk and she stopped it." The commander's eyes widened. He approached her cautiously, as if sizing up both her demeanor and her presence. "Explain," he said, voice commanding but edged with curiosity and incredulity. She nodded once, then recounted the events succinctly but clearly. The first device beneath the crates, the secondary hidden panel, the third, deadliest device, and the saboteur who had attempted to manipulate the situation. She described the sequence of events, her calculated actions, and the technical skill required to neutralize the threats. Her words were calm, measured, but the intensity of the narrative conveyed the peril she had faced. The commander's expression shifted through disbelief, astonishment, and finally respect. He looked around at the assembled soldiers, all of whom had gathered now, their curiosity piqued. She saved this base. All of you owe your lives to her, he said, voice loud enough to command attention. A hushed murmur swept through the group. Soldiers exchanged glances, realization dawning on their faces. The tourist they had ignored, dismissed, and underestimated was, in truth, a highly skilled operative, a master of diffusing explosive threats, and the single reason hundreds of lives had been spared. One young private stepped forward, awe and respect evident in his voice. I never thought someone like that could be here in our base. I mean, you're amazing." She allowed herself the faintest smile. There was no need for accolades, but acknowledgement from those whose lives she had protected was its own quiet reward. She checked her tools once more, ensuring nothing had been left behind that could pose further risk. The tension that had gripped her since the first device now ebbed slowly, replaced with a sense of calm accomplishment. The saboteur, somewhere in the shadows beyond the base perimeter, had vanished. Their threat had been neutralized for now. But she knew this was only one battle in a much larger war of intelligence, skill, and strategy. Others might come, others might attempt similar attacks, but for today, she had ensured the safety of the base and its personnel. The commander extended his hand, a rare gesture of personal acknowledgement. "Your skill, your composure, and your courage under extreme pressure saved lives today. On behalf of everyone here, thank you." She shook his hand, firm and controlled, the tension of the past hours lingering faintly in her grip. She allowed herself a single nod of acknowledgement, no words necessary. Her work had spoken louder than any ceremonial recognition could. The soldiers around them began to approach, offering nods, murmurs of gratitude, and quiet applause. For the first time in hours, the atmosphere of the base shifted from oblivious routine to awareness, respect, and deep appreciation for the unseen hero among them. She moved toward the edge of the base, scanning the horizon. The desert stretched endlessly, sunlight glinting off sand and metal alike. Her mind was already running through possibilities, assessing threats and calculating contingencies. The saboteur might return, new challenges might arise, and the delicate balance of life and danger she had navigated so carefully could tip again at any moment. Yet for now there was triumph. For now the base was safe, soldiers oblivious but alive, and her skills validated under the most extreme circumstances. She allowed herself a breath, steadying her mind, feeling the weight of exhaustion mixed with a quiet, powerful satisfaction. A gentle breeze stirred the sand at her boots. She scanned the base one last time, noting the subtle signs of life returning to normalcy. Soldiers laughing quietly, engines starting, routines resuming. The immediate danger had passed. Lives had been spared. She had fulfilled her mission. Then, with a quiet, deliberate motion, she disappeared back into the shadows near the tunnel entrance, leaving the soldiers and commander with a profound sense of awe and lingering curiosity. They had witnessed heroism without fully knowing its source, a quiet, deadly skill that had acted invisibly, decisively, and flawlessly.